Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the studies. Yesterday, we were discussing about various sources through which we know about our past, and in these sources, the most important were manuscript, and then inscriptions are also there. Uh, and we also discussed about the differences between the two and what are the plus point and minus point of the two. All these things were discussed. Then we were discussing about the last source, which are archaeologists. They also provide us so many things about the past, and through which we know about uh, the people, about the objects, traditions. All these things are known. We become known to all these things because of archaeologists. Actually, here one important question is who are archaeologists? Archaeologists are the people who study the remains of building, which are made of stones and brick, paintings and sculpture. So, and how do they study about these remains of buildings or paintings or sculpture? Actually, they excavate, they dig under the surface of the earth, and by this they get so many objects like tools, weapons, pots, pans, ornaments, and coins. And these are the objects which were used by people long, long ago. And by these objects, we also came to know about the our past. So, uh, those objects which are made of uh, hard substance such as metal, stone, those objects are imperishable and they remain there in the excavation, and they are really useful for archaeologists to know about the past. Archaeologists also look for bones of animals, birds, and fish. And by the bones of them, they try to understand the eating habits of the people. And plant remains are also there, which the archaeologists find out. And what we find that if seeds of grain or pieces of wood have been burnt, they survive in a charred form. So, in this way, the archaeologists also provide us so many informations about the past. Now, there are other people who are called historians. Historians, they are also people who study the past, who use different sources in order to get information about the past. And these sources are manuscript, inscriptions, and archaeology. These are the three sources: manuscript, inscriptions, and archaeology, which are used by historians to study the past. And what happens is that historians are they act just like detectives. If you have seen any serial in TV, on the television, you detective serial on the television, you must have seen how the detectives uh, link one evidence with the another, and in this way they came to understand how the crime was happened, and who was the criminal. So in the same way, the historians also connect one thing with the another, and by connecting all these informations, the historians come to a conclusion about the past. So their work is very much interesting. They work in this way. Now we have understood that what are the sources for the study of the past, and the person who study the past is called historians, and the how the historians work, that is also now known to you. Now we will discuss another thing, that is one past or many. Your book, the title of your book is Our Past. So, in this title, what we see that the word past is not singular, PASTS. This S is coming for in order to make it a plural word. So, why this plural word is being used? It is used because what happened that it's not that past of all the people are same. Actually for different group of people, their past was different. It was not that all the people who were living at one time were having the same type of life. There were so many differences between the life of the different people. That is why their past is also different. If we can understand it by an example. Suppose there are herders or farmers. Okay, so what we find that the lives of herders or farmers were uh, in a particular way, and that their life was completely different from the life of kings and queens who were also living at the same time at the same place, but their work is completely different, and their work according to their work, their life was also different. So their past is completely different to each other. In the same way, there were also merchants were also there, craft persons were also there, and all the people who are doing different type of work, who are living different type of lives, their past is completely different from each other. And and even today we find that people do not belong to same do not practice same customs in their life. In different parts of the country, what we find that people follow different practices and different customs. People, for example, people who live in Andaman, their main staple food is fish, and their main occupation is hunting and collecting forest produce. So they are still living like the people used to live long ago. And if we compare the life of the people who are living in Andaman with the life of the people who are living in cities, what we find that people who are living in cities, they are not independent in terms of food. For in order to fulfill the food related need, they are dependent on the farmers. They are not independent, just like Andaman, the people who are living in Andaman, they are independent. They are producing their food themselves. They are getting their food on their own. But people who are living in cities, they are not independent in this sense, and they are getting their food from other sources. So differences of this kind, what we find is that at present this type of difference is existing, and the same way this type of differences in the life, in the livelihood, in the eating habits, all in all the in all the aspects, the life of different people were different. So what we find that the title of the book is in the plural. Besides, we find that there is another kind of difference. What we find that we know so many things about the kings and the queens and the battles they fought, because the kings used to keep records of their victories, whatever battles they were fighting, whatever battles they were winning, they used to keep records of all these victories, and that is the reason that we are knowing about the battles, we are knowing about the victories of the kings. But what happened the ordinary people, uh, such as hunter, the fisher folk, then the gatherers, farmers, herders, all these ordinary people, what happened that they did not keep records of what they did, because there may be various reasons. The ordinary people were not thinking that they are doing something very important, so they did not think that there is need to write all these things, there is need to keep record of all these things. So they did not kept record, they did not keep record of all these things. Then there is another reason also, they may not be knowing how to write, and that is also one of the reason for not keeping the record. So archaeologists dig the surface of the earth, then and they uh, find so many objects which were used by the people, and by these objects we come to know about the lives of the ordinary people. Still there are many things which are not known to us. So in this way we find that different people have different past, different group of people have different past, and so there is past is used in the plural form in the title of the book. Now we will discuss about dates. How do we uh, write dates? How do we calculate dates? I told you earlier also. Okay, when at present we are in the 2020. This is 2020 AD. AD means Anno Domini. Anno Domini, it means in the uh, uh, era of Christ, when Christ took birth. After the birth of that period, which starts after the birth of Jesus, after the birth of Jesus Christ, who was the founder of Christianity, that period is known as AD. So, this 2020 means 2020 years after the birth of Christ. Okay, and those dates which are before the birth of Christ, they are counted backward and usually have the letter BC, means before, B for before, C for Christ. So we consider everything according to the birth of Christ. The year in which Christ birth took place. From that started Anno Domini AD, and from that year, what started uh, counting in the forward forward counting, 1, 2, 3, 4, and thus we reached 2020. But before the birth of Christ, it was counted backward. Okay, and it usually have the letters BC. So this is the way we count the years. And here I'm again telling you that when we were I was telling you that the earliest cities came into existence 4,700 years ago from today. So it means 4,700 years ago. Okay, this is I'm writing it here so that these things should become clear to you. 4,700. Now 4,700 years ago, okay, from today. So now what we will do, if we this is neither AD nor BC, it is only telling you that the period was 4,700 years ago from this date, from 2020. So what we will do, we are not take it 2020, we will consider it as 2000, because the period is so big that 20 years is not a big matter. So we will exclude 20 from 2000 and we will consider only it as 2000. Okay, now what we will do, that we will subtract this 2000 from 4,700. So what we will get? We will get 0, 0, 7 and 2. And now this 2,700 is what? This is 2,700 BC. Okay. So the earliest cities came into existence in the plains of in the valley of Indus, in the Indus Valley, in the year 2700 BC. Okay. Now one more thing I will like to tell you, that the counting is backward. How it is counted backward? Suppose this is 2700 BC, when the earliest cities came into existence. Then after 2700 BC, what will come? It's not 2701, but it will be 2699 BC. So in this way, the in before Christ era, the years move backward. Okay. Then after the year 2699, which year will come? 2698. Okay. So in this way it will move. Now it is again given because it is very much important for you to understand these things. Otherwise, what will happen, that the problem will be piled up and you will never be able to understand all these things. So you should clear all your confusion at this level only. So it is again written BC. We have seen it stands for before Christ. You will sometimes find AD before dates. This stands for two Latin words, Anno Domini, meaning in the year of the Lord, after the birth of the Lord. When the Lord has come into the world. So, 2005 can also be written as AD 2005. And one more thing which we have to remember, that when you write AD, it is written before the number of the years. Okay. Sometimes CE is used instead of AD. AD के जगह पे कभी कभी क्या करते हैं, CE is also used, and this CE stands for common era. CE stands for common era, and BC for before common era. BC is used instead of BC, and that is before common era. We use these terms because the Christian era is now used in most countries of the world. In India, we began using this form of dating from about 200 years ago. Okay, in India, we started this type of form of dating from 200 years ago. And sometimes the letter BP is also there. It means before present. Okay, so this is all about your date, and now we will read what was happening elsewhere, and in this we are uh, going to know about uh, the scripts and the languages which were written on the inscriptions in Egypt. So, what we see that we have seen that inscriptions are written on hard surfaces. You know, I told you that inscriptions are those which are written on hard surfaces like stone or metals. Many of these were written several hundreds of years ago. These inscriptions were written so many years ago, and all inscription contain both scripts and languages. In the inscription, what we find that some or the other language has been used, and for writing a language, what we need a script. So, both script and language are used, and what happens that language and the scripts keep changing. It's not like that whatever language was being used by the people long ago, uh, 5,000 years ago, whatever language or script was using by the people, and those languages and scripts are still used by the people. It's not like that. हमेशा इसमें changes होते रहते हैं. Okay, so how do scholars understand what was written at that time? आज से 5,000 years ago जो लोगों ने whatever they written on the stone, on the metal, so the language which were used by the people, the script which were used by the people, that has been changed now. Those languages, those scripts are not in use. So how do scholars understand what was written? For this, they follow a process, and this process is known as decipherment. What is the process? The process is called decipherment. This is decipherment. It means किसी चीज को पता करना कि वो क्या है. ठीक है. Now what we see, this is the uh, inscription. This is the script which is used by the people of Egypt. And this type of language is called pictography. It is what is written, it is written through the pictures. Okay. One of the most famous stories of decipherment comes from Egypt, a country in North Africa where there were kings and queens about 5,000 years ago. So now we are talking about a country which was named Egypt, and Egypt is a country which lies in the North Africa, in the northern part of Africa, and there used to be kings and queens about 500 years ago. It means 5,000 years ago. It means 5,000 minus 2,000, because at present we are in 2020. We are excluding 20. We are not considering this 20. We are considering only 2000. ठीक है, तो क्या कर रहे हैं हम लोग, subtract कर रहे हैं from 5,000. We are subtracting 2,000, and what we are getting, we are getting 3,000. So in 3000 BC there used to be kings and queens in Egypt. Now, Rosetta is a town on the north coast of Egypt. On the north coast of Egypt, there is a town named Rosetta, and here an inscribed stone was found, which contained inscriptions in three different languages and script. In Rosetta, what we find that that a stone which is in which inscription is written, and the inscription is written in three different language. One is Greek, and two other languages are two other forms of Egyptian. Okay, so scholars who could read Greek, what they found that it is actually the name of the kings and queens, and these names of the kings and queens were enclosed in a little frame which is called cartous. You can say it is in a frame, in a box like a structure it is written. They then placed the Greek and the Egyptian signs side by side and identified the sounds for which the Egyptian letters stood, because they are not able to understand the Egyptian language. And though they are able to understand the Greek language, and by understanding the Greek language, they came to conclusion that they are written the names of kings and queens. And now what is their effort is to understand the Egyptian language, and for that what they are doing, that they place the Greek and the Egyptian signs side by side and identified the sounds for which the Egyptian letters stood, because Greek is identifiable. So, with the help of Greek word, by the help of Greek sounds and picture, now they are trying to understand the Egyptian letters. Okay, and in this picture, you can see that this is the picture. This is the inscription which is found in Rosetta. In this, you see, this is the name of the king. In this, P is silent. Ptolemys is the name of the king, and this is Cleopatra, which is the name of the queen. Okay, so here you can see that L stands for lion, and here also L stands for bird. A has come for, L stands for lion, A has come for bird. Here also A has come for bird. In this way they try to decipher this unknown language which is no longer in use, and now it is very much tough job to understand the language. And this is the function of the uh, historians to decipher this type of script and language. So now our chapter is complete now, but we have left some portions such as the extra informations which are written on the sides of the book that we will discuss tomorrow. I'm telling you what we are, and various pictures which are given in the book that will also be discussed. Here, Rasida's question that it will be discussed, and other things which are given as extra informations, those will also be discussed tomorrow. Okay, this it is written this information like this, whatever is there and whatever picture is also there, this is the thing which will be discussed tomorrow. So hopefully we will be able to complete this chapter tomorrow. Okay. Now this is all for today. We will now meet tomorrow. Okay.